Hey everyone, welcome to the first video from section 9.2. So in this section we're starting to look more in general at nonlinear systems and seeing what we can do to try to analyze and try to figure out what's going on in these systems. In general, you can't really solve them always out explicitly, but there might be some ways you can get an idea of what's going on, just like we had for our autonomous systems or autonomous equations when we were dealing with them back in section 2.5. So a lot of stuff we do here is going to be motivated by that analysis and trying to figure out how we can solve autonomous ODE systems instead of just ODE equations. So just go ahead and start talking about it. So like I said in the intro, we're jumping into the general study of nonlinear systems right now. And this turns out to be a lot to ask for and more that we can actually do. So instead, we're going to restrict to our case of autonomous systems because with autonomous systems, we at least have a chance to try to figure out what's going on, whereas with the general system as a whole, we really don't know what's going on. So we're going to restrict to autonomous systems because we kind of already know how to analyze these because we used studying autonomous equations way back in chapter 2, so we can use the same methods we developed there to try to figure out what's going on here as well. So what do we mean by autonomous systems here? So the general two-function system, two-function first-order system, looks like x prime is some function f of t, x, and y prime is some function g of t, x, and y. And by autonomous, we just mean that the right-hand side here doesn't depend on t explicitly. So if this is just some function f of x and y, this is just some function g of x and y, in this case, we say that the system is autonomous, which is the same sort of definition we had from before from section 2.5 looking at autonomous systems. It just meant that the right-hand side didn't depend on t explicitly, only on y, the function we cared about, but now we have two functions, so we can depend on both the functions to make it work. Now, an example of this, which you've already seen, is if I have x vector prime equals a times vector x, a is a constant matrix. This is an autonomous system. We kind of used that motivation to study them in the first place, and we can solve this guy more or less explicitly, or at least get a really good idea of what the solutions look like if the guy is linear like this. We're going to end up using this sort of method to figure out what goes on with the nonlinear systems, but we have that in our pocket for we can solve these sorts of linear autonomous systems. Now, in another form of notation, we will also write x vector prime equals f vector of x for autonomous systems. So we basically just collapse the x prime y prime into a vector, the xy into a vector, and then the functions f and g into a vector and get something that looks like this. So this is sort of what they would consider like a general form for autonomous systems in the linear or nonlinear case, and this here was our general linear autonomous system. Now again, since we have an autonomous equation, this means that our direction field doesn't depend on t. So at every point xy, there's a unique direction vector that the curves have to trace out, which means that in this case, our curves can't cross again. So even in this case, we know that curves can't cross. Solution curves can't cross. So again, the idea of finding some sort of simple, easy solutions and then building up from there is a nice way to go because we know we can't cross over those guys later on. All right, so now I have to go into some definitions to sort of set the background for all the stuff that we're going to talk about in this section, really in this chapter as a whole. So definitions. And some of these you've seen before, but not in this context. A point x0 where f of x0 is 0 is called a critical point of the system, and this gives rise to constant or equilibrium solutions. Just as before for autonomous equations, if I have an autonomous system and I have a point where the function f evaluates to 0, that means my derivative is 0 as well, which means I can't move, which means I get constant solutions, or equilibrium solutions. And we're going to want to look at these when we're trying to figure out what's going on with this system. We're going to want to look at and around these critical points. A critical point is stable. We're defining the word stable here. Now, I'm going to not use the book's definition. The book's definition does this epsilon and delta stuff, which I know how much you love seeing those. So I'm going to not use the book's definition. I'm just going to talk about it in general, but it's the same idea as the one in the book. So a critical point is stable if whenever we start a curve close to x0, and by starting a curve, I mean starting a solution curve with initial condition near that point, then the curve stays near x0 for all time. And this idea of close to and near is what's made more formal by those epsilons and deltas, but we don't really need that. We're just going to use this as it is. Basically means so if I start close to my critical point, then I can't just go away and randomly run away. I have to stay nearby for all t. A critical point is asymptotically stable if it is stable and whenever we start close to x0, the solution converges to x0 as t goes to infinity. So again, we have a different distinction between asymptotically stable and stable. Stable just means that if I start nearby, I have to stay nearby. Asymptotically stable means if I start nearby, I'm staying nearby, but I'm also getting closer and closer to my critical point as time goes on. And then finally, if a critical point is not stable, then we call it unstable. So the general thing you should have in your mind for this difference between stability, stable, unstable, asymptotically stable, is the idea of a pendulum. Right, if I have a swinging pendulum, the bottom point here is asymptotically stable, assuming we have at least some damping. It's stable if there's no damping, but the upper point is unstable no matter what, because there is a critical point if the pendulum is straight up in the air. There is a point where it'll balance and sit perfectly straight up. But if you move it at all from that position, it swings down and goes to the bottom. So the bottom is asymptotically stable, and the top is unstable. Now, as we'll see in section 9.3, which is why I'm waiting not to get any examples for this section, is that we can analyze a nonlinear system to find its critical points, and then we can analyze the other to see what it looks like, and see if it's, we'll be able to prove that for the pendulum that the top is unstable and the bottom is asymptotically stable in this context. And we'll do the same for other random systems as well. The issue is that for nonlinear systems, you can have more than one critical point, right? For x prime equals ax, there was only one critical point at the origin. For nonlinear systems, there can be more. And you might have multiple stable equilibrium points. So you'd care about, if you ran a solution from a random point, which one of those does it go to? Does it go to the one stable one or the other one? If you have two stable ones, asymptotically stable ones, then it could go to either one. The question is which one goes where. And that's the idea of the discussion of the basis of attraction. So for an asymptotically stable critical point, the basis of attraction of x0 is all points P so that the curve starting at P converges to x0 as t goes to infinity. So I'm looking at all points in the plane where if I start there and start my solution flowing, it's going to run to x0 as time goes on. And the last definition for this is a trajectory that bounds a basis of attraction, so one that's on the edge of it, is called a separatrix because it separates solutions that converge to x0 and ones that don't. Now, overall, it is not possible to find these guys analytically. At least the basis of attraction and the separatrix, not possible to find analytically, except for maybe in the simplest of cases. So what you should be able to do is you should be able to identify these from pictures. So if I give you a direction field for this ODE, you should be able to sort of trace out where you think the separator should be and what the basis of attraction ends up looking like. There are a couple of examples like that in the book, which you should definitely look at, especially the one in that section, to see how they do that. All right, so that's it for this video. I'm going to give you a problem to look at, which is basically just finding the critical points of a system. So take a look at that, and we'll see this problem coming back and back and back as we go through the rest of the sections, because it's going to be our example that we're going to keep chaining through as we go. So I'll put that up for you right now. All right, so there's that. I want you to take that equation and use that to figure out the critical points for all these for this system. Find all of them, and make sure you get all the different combinations. All right, so that's it for this one. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where we're doing more stuff with trajectories for these autonomous systems.